Resident Evil 4 is amazing and incredible, and it let me borrow the Lamborghini, and it saved my life back in Nam, and it gave me a winning lottery ticket. We get it, Iro, it's a good game. I and many others have been singing the praises of this game for over a decade now, and the public perception is pretty much set in stone. And the remake that came out a few months ago is receiving overwhelming praise as well. Some fans are split on whether or not it lives up to the original, or if that's even possible, but broadly speaking, people really like the game. And that's cool. I think both games are great, and I think they both stand on their own. Even though the original is my childhood, I can admit that it's not perfect. And even though I love the remake, I know that that's not perfect either. And I think that's pretty cool. But both things can be good. So you're not gonna catch me doing anything goofy like, oh, I don't know, cutting up a bunch of clips of both games, putting them side by side, and intentionally trying to make one look better than the other, and then being too big of a coward to stand on my own opinion, because I'm just letting the footage speak for itself because I'm a spineless loser. It's no secret that I love the remake, and I'll have a much longer video going over all of it in the future. But for now, I wanted to talk about one aspect of the remake which I think did a really good job of improving over the original, which may even be its most iconic. I'm talking, of course, about the opening fight in the village. The village siege in Resident Evil 4 is one of the best opening levels in any game ever made. In a vacuum, it sets the tone perfectly by throwing you off the deep end early and forcing you to use what you learned in the previous section before it, but under intense pressure. And in the context of Resident Evil, it forces you to unlearn everything you know about the franchise up to that point and makes you engage with its mechanics in order to survive. Leon can aim with perfect accuracy, but he can't move while shooting or reloading. And he still moves with tank control. Getting a shot on an enemy will almost always cause a reaction that benefits you. But the main thing you want to see is that step back stagger animation that sets you up to do a kick. That kick will send every surrounding enemy flying back. This is how you win in Resident Evil 4. If your back is to the wall or if you're surrounded, one good headshot from the starter pistol can be the difference between resetting the entire situation and surviving or getting hacked and whacked. The village siege forces you to figure this out quickly because there are just too many enemies for you to deal with. You will run out of ammo if you don't engage with the game's mechanics and just try to gun everybody down. There are so many enemies coming from so many angles, and remember, you have to commit to a standing position to even think about taking a shot. You have to engage with the new mechanics or you're not gonna survive. There's just no other way, okay? There's one other way, but are you proud of yourself? Your first time playing this is gonna feel tense and panicked and nerve-wracking, and another synonym, because as cool as Leon is, he's outmanned. There's way too many enemies, and this isn't a fight that you're gonna win by killing them all, or even escaping. You're literally just surviving. Now, the villagers by themselves are a strong force to overcome just because of their sheer numbers, but things get cranked up to 11 once you flee into a building, just trying to get your bearings, and a cutscene starts. At this point, you're probably feeling just as panicked and confused as Leon is. This is way more than you bargained for, and it's a great moment where gameplay and story are intertwined. Both the player and the player character are feeling very similar emotions right now. Unfortunately, it's about to get much, much worse, but before that, let's look at the remake. The remake and the original do not play the same at all. Leon can now move while shooting and reloading, and he moves like a normal human being and not an M4 Sherman. To compensate, he doesn't aim as accurately unless you equip a laser sight, and only a few guns can do that. Now, if you've played the VR version of RE4, then you'll know that this game was not designed for free-flowing movement. So to balance things out, the enemies are on f***ing speed. These Ganados want you dead. Real bad. They run fast enough to keep up with you, they attack often, they have stupid long grab range, they're tankier and usually take about 2 headshots to stagger for a kick, which sounds really crunchy now, and I love that. Seriously, the kicks are fucking baller in this game. But the kicks don't do nearly as much crowd control as it used to, and even the shotgun, which was like the get out of jail free card in RE4, doesn't control crowds as well either. Now, Leon isn't powerless. He does have some new abilities like being able to parry with his knife to set up a kick, which is super clutch if you're out of ammo or in between mags. But that knife does have durability, and it has to be repaired if it breaks during combat. Lastly, the enemies do big damage to Leon, and it really only takes a few hits to take you out on a new playthrough. Now, with all of that in mind, the village siege in the remake is fucking horrifying. I've been playing RE4 since I was 10 years old, and I will be 27 this year. I know the game in and out, and I've played that opening section more than 100 times, and I'm not joking. Playing it in the remake made me feel like I was 10 years old again. The enemies spawn much more frequently and are everywhere. They're around corners, they're in buildings, they're in the couch, they're coming out the closet, they're strong, they're fast, and they really, really hate Leon. They're aggressively barking out voice lines in the original, but with the more realistic approach to the voices, it sounds much more menacing. You fight them outside like normal, but you quickly realize that they're coming from so many different angles and they're so fast and so strong that you're gonna have to keep moving. And while running away, you barely make it into the same building we were mentioning earlier, and we also get a cutscene. And this cutscene also does a great job of showing how the player and Leon feel in this moment. Totally surrounded, back against the wall, just looking for a brief moment of reprieve to get your bearings, and then he shows up. Dr. Motherfucking Salvador. Sack on head, chainsaw in hand, and even if you've never seen a video game ever in your life, one thing is immediately clear. I cannot let this guy get near me. This is where the game really begins. Dr. Salvador's inclusion in this fight is game design genius. If you catch on quickly and realize the most optimal way to play the game, the villagers in the original can be dealt with pretty easily. So throwing in a mini boss that takes more shots to stagger, is always running at you, and can kill you in one hit, ensures that you stay mobile and you stay humble. The threat of Dr. Salvador not only keeps you on your toes, but he makes the regular enemies stronger. Every grab they get, attack they land, or even miss, is another opportunity to slow you down so that the real deal can finish you off. Adding this enemy was a great idea and made for one of the best opening sequences in any game, and somehow they made it better. In the remake, Salvador isn't just a tank, he's like two tanks, glued together, on the back of Wolverine. He is relentless in this game, and like I said, the villagers are already really strong and can kill you pretty easily. So even if somehow you do really well fighting them, it doesn't matter once he shows up. He has more attacks now, he swings wildly, and even has this really crazy charge attack, and if any of these hits you, it's over. This section is the village perfected. Leon is completely outmatched, and he does not have enough resources to win. The enemies work together so well, and they come at you from so many different angles, that it doesn't even feel worth it to try and actually kill him, because focusing on one enemy for too long usually leads to getting hit or getting grabbed, and that's just not gonna work. In the original, if you never went into that building or happened to stumble across that door that he's just standing in front of, you didn't have to fight him at all. You could just beat up on the villagers for a few minutes and wait for good old La Campana. In the remake, he just shows up after a few minutes if you kill enough of the villagers, almost like they're calling in for backup. Now, you could be a huge disappointment and climb up the ladder of shame to wait it out, but oops, those floors just ain't what they used to be. It's almost like the devs are laughing at anyone who thought that they could just hide up there again. And there's this cool event where if you get grabbed in this little alleyway area, they'll hold you down while Salvador comes around the corner and destroys the entrance in front of you, and you're forced to break out of it and escape. There's a guy just standing there waiting for you to come that way so he can grab you to start the cutscene. And you can even see them like slowly trying to set the trap up by funneling you into that area and blocking off other paths for you to escape. Now, if he does get close enough to swing on you, you can block it with your knife if you're quick enough, but this breaks the knife and it leaves you without it for the rest of the encounter, so you can't parry or block anymore. Dr. Salvador turns this already tense and overwhelming level into something that feels almost insurmountable. Everywhere you go and every second that you waste being indecisive is costly, as you hear the sound of the screaming mob behind you, followed by the humming of his chainsaw's motor. And the icing on the cake that puts all of this together is the banger of a theme that plays while all of this is happening. Once Salvador shows up, this track starts playing, and I think it really perfectly encapsulates what this encounter feels like. The loud banging drums keep a frantic tempo and have this like rustic and industrial sound to it. But the main attraction is this crazy synth that comes in at about the 1 minute mark. This sound, this rising, anxiety-inducing sound, is Dr. Salvador. It's loud, intrusive, it's persistent, and a constant reminder that he is coming for you. It might go away for a few seconds, but you know it's coming right back. You have to stay on your toes, and you can't get too comfortable because the threat of Salvador is always looming. He's around the corner, he's right behind you, and every moment that you waste, he's getting closer. Until that final moment where the bell rings, and everyone stops, and you take a sigh of relief as you realize that you just barely made it. All happening in gameplay, by the way, which is another really nice touch. This track is excellent, and it's a great example of how good music can establish tone in gameplay. It highlights the overwhelming force of the villagers and the blaring, constant reminder of Dr. Salvador. And what better name for a track like this than the Chainsaw? When I first played the demo and heard this track while playing the village section, I loved it immediately. And then when I later looked at the soundtrack and saw that this song was called The Chainsaw, like, it's just perfect, dude. Like, it just brought everything all back together and made me realize that, like, yes, that is what this encounter is. It's what takes this village section from a great opener to an all-timer. When you think of Resident Evil 4, and specifically this encounter, you think of the Chainsaw Man. You think of fighting in the village and running away from the guy with the chainsaw. Dr. Salvador is this encounter. He's the main attraction that brings everything all together and makes it so good. And this track, combined with everything else that makes the remake so good, takes one of the greatest opening levels in any video game and somehow makes it even better.